Good morning.
To ask you,
Good morning. That was well done. You all must have had some coffee. How was dinner? Sounds like we were researching fish. So this will be the third and last thing I'm going to do for you guys today. I really do think 3 of me violates an OSHA regulation, and I'll try and move quickly for you guys. I do want to say that I was talking to my son this morning about he's starting a new job and what it feels like, and I guess he's excited and nervous, and so I can remember being in your shoes, although we didn't have any training then. And for me, Scott Madden has been a really good place. I've been here since '94. It's been a place of challenge and reward. I've learned and grown, reward both money and fulfillment in my work. I think working here has made me a better person. It's just been a great career for me, and that's what I hope for you guys. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about people models, which I'll explain what that is in a second. But can anyone at all remember from yesterday the definition of their job as consultants? Tessa, can you say that louder so I can hear you?
Clients think and act differently so that they are more successful.
Isn't that amazing? My stuff is so scintillating, she committed it to memory. So our job is to help clients think and act differently so that they're more successful. And as we talked about yesterday, people don't want to think and act differently. At least I don't, and most of us don't. And so that means that it's very important in our work to think about the people side of the equation. So are people all the same, Christina?
No.
They're different?
Yes.
They are different. And so everybody's not like me?
No.
That's a good thing. So to help people think and act differently, you've got to get them to buy into your ideas, or ultimately, as you move up and become a partner, you've got to get them to buy your services. I used to work for a partner who said there are 3 kinds of work at Scott Madden that roughly correlate to the levels. There's replicate, do the thing that we did before but for a new client. Create, here's a clean sheet of paper, nobody's ever done this before, figure it out. And persuade, lead the client to fall in love with your ideas and implement them. You may remember from marketing that the thing that's different about services is the customer or the client is a part of the product. When you buy a car, you're not a part of the product. But when you get a haircut, you are. Consulting is a very intimate service. I've had clients say, I've entrusted my career to you before, and I'm entrusting it to you now. You spend a lot of time going, boy, I wish somebody would listen to my advice, and then they say that, and they go, holy crap, all of this is on my shoulders. They come to you when they don't have any other choice. They go, well, we're screwed. We'll hire Scott Madden. The chief operating officer has said that HR has 153 pain points. So the EVP that HR reports to has hired us to figure it out and fix it because he can't think of anything else to do. So the stakes are high, the emotions are high, and that doesn't always bring out the best in people. What we do and what differentiates our brand of consulting is the quality of our relationships with clients. We care about them. We care about their success. We know who they are. We personalize our work to them, and that's why they actually implement our stuff, and that's why Chris Crane said that our stuff sticks to the wall when we leave and that they take ownership. So you got to understand people to do that. You got to understand people to have relationships. You got to understand people to help them think and act differently. And you got to understand people to get them to buy into your ideas because they're not all like you. So this is some stuff from, oops, Miller and Hyman, who, as you move up and get interested in selling, probably a couple books that you ought to read. And so they say when you're selling, and one thing I will tell you, when you become partner, you're scared to death because suddenly you have to sell work. And it takes a while to figure it out, but actually it turns out you've been selling all along because you've been getting clients to fall in love with your ideas. So this is just the same kind of persuading in a different venue. So I think about the two things interchangeably. So Miller and Hyman say when you're selling, the first thing you ought to do is listen. Why would you start there? Why not just tell them how great it is? You know?
You should get them to talk more so you know what they're feeling, what their problem is.
That's right. You want to know how they see the problem. They also, as we'll talk about, people are endlessly self-revealing. They will tell you what's important to them about it. The problem is not just the substance, it's how they see it. So you got to ask good questions. What is a good question?
Maybe an open-ended question to get them to start revealing.
Open-ended. So is a closed question a good question, Evan?
No.
So that would not be a good one, right? Really good questions also, if you ask a good question, you'll see the person kind of look up and to the side. Really good questions make people think, and they help them crystallize. Often part of the problem is they haven't got a crystallized understanding of what the problem is. Only after you ask questions do you tell them much about what it is you can do for them or seek any kind of commitment, whether it's ideas or services. So this is some Dale Carnegie stuff, which one of our directors did a really nice deck for all the other directors. You want to begin the conversation about anything in a friendly way. Our boss, Brad Kitchens, will probably talk about chemistry, which he thinks is the single most important thing. You've got to connect with the client to get them to trust you and to be able to help them. And he's like a magician. Within 5 minutes, he's found something. Oh, you're from the Midwest? I'm from the Midwest. Oh, you went to Duke? Oh, I went to Duke. And found some way to connect. We have in our brain mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are things that fire when we think the other person is like us, like we're looking in a mirror. We were evolved to live in tribes of about 150 people. That's about as many names as you could remember all the individuals. And the way our brains are wired, we think that there are two groups of people. There's us and them. So us is the 150 people. We look after each other's livestock. We care for each other's children. Them are the bad guys who come in and club us over the head and steal our livestock and set our fires on village, set our villages on fire. So when the mirror neurons fire, what the brain thinks is this person must be one of us. Almost any connection will be enough to get those firing and defenses will come down. So you always want to establish chemistry first and do content second. Be genuinely interested in the person. One of the privileges of our work is you get to work with really cool people who become your friends. The guy who hired us to do the HR assessment is someone I've known for 5 or 6 years. We have dinner all the time. We talk about each other's kids. He invited me out to come to his house when we can get out there. And the guy who's mad at him, the chief operating officer, has been my client and friend for 15 years. These are people I like, I trust, and I respect, and it's the cool part of the job. It's not just the glamour of living in hotel rooms where there's no rug on the floor and the soap shaped like a golf ball, which why would you do that? Because the golf ball just rolls across the counter. So maybe I'm not good at hotel design. A couple other things to mention here. The other person's point of view. In my consulting class, I talk about the single most important thing in consulting, and there's about 8 different ones of those that I'll mention at different times. But one of them is cognitive empathy, the ability to see the world through someone else's eyes is a magic trick. It's different than effective empathy, or sympathy, which is feeling other person's feelings. It's being able to see things the way that they see it. I think people think I'm crazy, but one of my tricks is when I think the deck is done, I walk away from it for a little while, 5 or 10 minutes, get a cup of coffee, and then I come back and it's like I'm an actor. I'm able to read it as though I've never seen it before. And I start at bullet 1, word 1, and I read until something is jarring, which is usually bullet 3. I fix that and I go back to the beginning. I do that over and over and over again until I get through it. If you design the deck, your brain helps you out. It fills in the mistakes. It understands the context. Your reader or your audience, they don't have that. So you have to see the world through their eyes. If I'm on my game, I'm not just reading the deck as though I've never seen it before. I'm reading it as though I've never seen it before, and I am Mark Schiavone. And I know what Mark Schiavone likes, and I know what sets him off. Maybe not a couple of weeks ago, but most days. And so the ability to see the world through someone else's eyes, and we'll talk more about that in a second, is important. Last thing is dramatize your key ideas. Part of selling is conjuring. Part of it is a magic trick. You know, the magician has all the mechanics, but it's the patter, it's the packaging that makes it special. People want that, and you have to give them some of it. So, we said people are all different, and they buy ideas or services for their own reasons, not for yours. That means that the decision to buy into your idea is always personal and subjective and has nothing to do with your idea. What it has to do with is what that person thinks the idea will do for them. Does anybody know what % of their decisions are emotional? If you had 100 points, what % is rational logic? What % is emotional?
Yes, I'll say 90%, 20 to 30%.
20 to 30? What would you say?
90%.
90. Stanford says 95. Now, Rob, I don't think you could actually measure this or anyone can know. Of course, that's just a feeling on my part. So whether it's 20 or 30 or 90 or 95, it's like a lot. And the decision to buy into an idea is emotional. It is personal and subjective. It's based on that person's experiences, their deeply held emotional needs, their values and beliefs. Even if it's 20 or 30%, if you lose that, you lose a lot. So you've got to get that. Jerry Bell, who was, I guess, my leadership professor, now I teach the class, and as a consultant, talks about 3 levels of self. The surface self, you know, what about the weather? How about them Yankees? Beginning self, attitudes, beliefs, and theories. I think the world is changing and we've got too many hotels with golf balls in them for soap. And then your real true self, your core self, which he calls the 1,000 bricks of truth. So if you are very self-aware, maybe you know 600 of yours. They are forged from your experiences. So you want to connect with the 1,000 bricks of truth in the person that you're trying to influence. So 2 magic tricks. One is a magic question, ask for examples. When I say, you know, we did something like that last year and it didn't work, I don't think that kind of thing would apply here. Can you give me an example of what happened last year that concerns you? What do you think, what is an example of something that does apply here? We are endlessly self-revealing. The example I give you will be a parable, and it will tell you something about me. The other magic trick, we have these 1,000 bricks of truth, and they're connected in our brains to our words. Use their exact words. So if they call it success criteria, I call it success criteria. If they call it design guidelines, I call it design guidelines. If they call it what good looks like, I call it what good looks like. All those things mean the same thing to me, but they mean something different to that person because the one that they use is connected to how they think. So So people models is a made-up term, and I know that because I made it up. And what it refers to is frameworks that help you think about the people side of the equation. So some of us are naturals. My boss doesn't use these. He is a natural. He is instinctive with people. He is a good read of people. He's a very sincere, trustworthy person, someone that I admire a lot. And so he doesn't need any of this stuff. I do. For me, it's a learned behavior. I am not a natural. I need a framework. If you give me a framework and a little bit of information, I'm actually pretty good. But without one, it's a little bit hopeless. And so I'm going to share the frameworks that I like that work for me. There are plenty of other ones. There may be different ones that you like. But before we do that, let's just simplify this. A framework is nothing more than a set of attributes that cuts people into different groups. So let's say you had two clients that you needed to influence, and one was decisive and the other one was a procrastinator. Would you treat them the same?
I would treat them the same. I would approach them differently.
Okay. So how would you approach the procrastinator? How would you approach the decisive person?
I mean, I think it's just, again, kind of adapting to maybe their patterns of communication, but just to kind of get back to what you said, like, would you treat them the same? I would always approach them the same, in the same way that I would approach anyone. Talk about empathy and understanding and forwardness and a willingness to learn, but I think it's just finding out the way that they communicate on a certain level, what are their needs, and really I would say how they also maybe absorb information as well.
So decisive, procrastinator, what would you do different?
With the
Goes.
decisive person, I'll probably, well, I would probably trust them a bit more that, you know, if I communicate something that they are able to take that and run with it. And with someone who's maybe more of a procrastinator, I might need to be following up a little bit more to make sure that they internalize what I had said, or that we were, you know, on the same page with whatever was, you know, needing to get down there.
You might put the procrastinator on a little more shorter interval scheduling.
Yeah.
So Fred, you remember we talked yesterday and you were going to get this data. I was just wondering, you know, how it was coming, where the decisive person might hand it in. Any risks with decisive people? Tom?
Might not be thinking through everything as thoroughly as you want, so you might want to ask them a few more questions, get them thinking. Have you ever thought about X, Y, or Z or something?
Exactly. The procrastinator you may need to gentle along to make a decision. The decisive person you may need to have more of a decision process. Let's talk about some pros and cons before we go off half-cocked and do something. What about conceptual versus concrete thinkers? Rob?
I would say conceptual. I'd probably lay out the whole holistic framework of what we're going to do, and then with the concrete person, I'd probably get more into the specific details and give them building blocks so they can see where they're going to be going.
We were doing hostile merger integration planning. There's never been a hostile merger in the pure energy space in life. And so without going into details, it wrecks everything because you can't get what you need. And so it's a clean sheet of paper stuff, and I was making it up, and I'm a conceptual thinker, and so having client meetings, I'm going up to the whiteboard, I'm drawing circles and arrows, and it is brilliant work. It's actually really good. We're solving a tough problem in a great way, and the client hated it. The client is a very concrete thinker, and so after a while we figured it out, and I was working with a guy, the line partner is more of a concrete thinker than me, and so we got the client out of the room when we were dreaming it up, and so I did my part of the thing, which is draw the circles and arrows, and Todd would translate it into here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, here's step 4, and they loved that. It was the same stuff. They didn't care about all the crap of why you had to do it this way. What they want to know is, what do you do? How about political versus needs to do the right thing? Christina?
With a political person, you want to frame it in terms of advantages for them within the organization, whereas the do the right thing, you're probably appealing to their humanity and to their values.
I had a client hire me to look at the environmental function. He had created in his fossil division an empire of 30 people. And so I looked at it and I recommended that we tear that out of fossil and centralize it. And he was the big client and he's on the steering committee. We made our recommendation and he lost his temper and stormed out of the room. I thought, we are so fired. There goes all our work for the rest of the year. And 24 hours later, he sent an email to the corporate guy who said, I just want you to know I support Scott Madden's recommendations 100%. I'm going to help with the transition. And the only condition is that when you provide service back to me, and you'll hear from Aditya about providing services back, kind of as a shared service, when you provide services back to me, I insist that they be good. And everybody said, what in the hell was that? About 6 months later, I was at the dinner with him. I said, what? Everybody wondered kind of what happened because it seemed like you had a change of heart. Why? He said, why do you think? I said, well, I think there are two reasons. One reason is you're one who has to do the right thing, even if it's not the right thing for you. And the other is you're getting ready to lead this big initiative where you're going to ask other people to give stuff up. And he said, that's right. So you can make up any attributes, and in talking with your clients and listening to them and getting them to self-reveal, think about what they're like. These are some models that I like. The Bell model is the one on the right. The book's called, I think, The Achiever by Jerry Bell. And Jerry believes that our strengths and weaknesses are the same thing. Our strengths become weaknesses because we love them so much. We use them too frequently. On a scale of 10, we dial them up to 11, or we use them in circumstances where they're not really the right thing to do. The Bell model and all of these are based on the work of Carl Jung, the Jungian archetypes. Carl Jung was a psychologist, sort of contemporary with Freud, the beginning of the last century. So performers need to be famous. They need the spotlight. Attackers need to win, which we all need to win, but attackers need you to lose. If you know anyone who the argument can't end until you're wrong, that person's an attacker, probably. If they're changeable, if it was black yesterday and it's white today and you think you're losing your mind, that's another sign. There's a small group of us that are people that are trusted and everyone else is an idiot, then you're probably dealing with an attacker. Attackers are difficult. I've made good money working for client attackers by being the only one that didn't go crazy. Commanders have strong needs for control. Whatever it is, they'll finish. May not be important, but by God, if we make that little box on our list, we've got to check it off because, it'd be the end of the world. It'd be social chaos. People like Donald Trump would be elected president. Oh, wait, it's too late for that. Avoiders need to not fail. They'll run away rather than take a risk. Pleasers have to be loved. Drifters need freedom and fun. Wherever the lines are, they can't color within them. You show me the line and I'll go right across it. All of these things are strengths in good measure, but to excess, they are problematic. As I mentioned yesterday, you want to find the Venn diagram between what your project needs and what the client loves to do. We always, I'm sure you'll hear this from others if you haven't heard already, but we work for shareholder. If it's a nonprofit, it's a little different, but similar. Our job is to do the right thing for shareholder. While you're at it, make as many clients successful as you can. The one who bought our services and is paying you, that would be a really good one to make successful. But you can't sacrifice shareholders' interests on that person's interests, no matter what. So when you design your project, what you want to find is a role that is a natural for this person. We were doing a project on new product development, and all the people doing the work on the client teams didn't feel like doing it because they were busy. And so we went to the CEO and said, in a project like this, at this stage, what we like to do is stand up the senior leader to explain the vision of why the new products are important for growth. Of course, we'd never had a project go like this before. It was true that in a project like this, at this stage, this is what we like to do. just hadn't happened before. So he was a performer. He was one who loved the spotlight. So we stood him up in front of everybody. He conjured, he produced the vision. They all went, holy cow, this is the CEO, this must be important. And we got him aligned. That was the Venn diagram between what he was good at and what he loved to do and what the project needed. When you design your project organization and your roles, don't just go with logic. Think about what the people are like. So, social styles. Have any of you seen Social Styles? You have? Can you talk a little bit about them, or are you not that familiar?
We studied them in organizational behavior. I guess they're the way that you like to lead or get things done or associate with other people.
So drivers, this is, that's exactly right. Some people think of social styles as more communication styles than personality types, but it's usually taught as personality types. So each social style has different needs. Drivers need control. Expressives need approval. They need words of affirmation. Amiables need harmony. If you're working with an amiable, the person we're doing the HR assessment for is an amiable, so when the chief operating officer says HR has 153 pain points, you know, that's not harmony. That's upsetting. Analyticals need to be right. So with a driver, you need to be businesslike, you need to stick to the agenda. These are objectives for the meeting, this is how we get from point A to point B, this is what we're gonna do, and you start. With amiable, you say, how are those new golf clubs? Didn't you just get them last week? How was the round this week? I was going back and forth between a driver and an amiable culture, and if you were to get that backwards, it would be considered rude. If you're in the driver culture and you say, how was your weekend? They go, well, where are the objectives? Where's the agenda? Let's get going. If you're in the amiable culture and you dive in, they kind of go, boy, he's so rude. Analyticals need to be right. They have trouble making decisions because if you're wrong, you need to commit sepulchre. So if you need an analytical to make a decision, you say, now Greg, you know, we're gonna have to make a decision. We don't have to make it right now. You know, we're gonna make it in a couple of days. So let's think about what information and analysis you would need to feel comfortable to make a really good decision. So you need to see the decision coming and you gotta give him space. You know, if you say, make it now, you're gonna freak him out. So, Bell, social styles, Myers-Briggs is the third one I'm going to talk about. Has anyone here had Myers-Briggs? Know your letters? All of you. Did you hit it?
Do not.
No?
I'm an ENFJ.
ENFJ? How about you?
More what, maybe it changed. It was ENFJ.
ENFJ?
ESFJ, I think?
ENTP.
I took it twice and mine flipped from extroverted to introverted within the span of like 2 weeks. So I didn't put much faith in what I got.
Yeah, was it strong E or I, or were you kind of on that line in the
I
middle?
think it was E and I, and then like I and I, maybe, I don't know.
ISTJ.
Interesting. You don't know yours?
I think it was ISFP.
So I am INTJ. So E and I, if you're an I, you live in your own little bubble, which I do. You have an inner world, and so when you're around other people, it drains your batteries because you're being drawn out of your inner world. It's not that you don't love other people, you do. It's just that the way you can tell without taking the test is if you've been to a cocktail party or a dinner with lots of people and lots of talking, at the end, if you're keyed up and can't get to sleep, you're an E. At the end, if you're a dish rag and you go, this was lovely, but I need to go back to my room now, you're an I. So I'm an I. I am one of my faults is I don't do a lot of team dinners, and I've been known to say to folks, I love you to pieces, I'm a INTJ, I'm an introvert, I am now a dish rag, and I'm going back to my room, I'm gonna put on my jammies, and I'm gonna read the newspaper. The S and N, S is you prefer your data unadulterated. No remarks. N is you prefer pattern recognition. You know, a single data point is a three-dimensional pattern, if you mean. Decisions, do you start with logic and consistency, or do you start with people and special circumstances? J and P, I'm a very strong J. J's have to get to closure. P's, my wife's a P. P's don't want closure because the journey is the thing. If we actually finish, then it would be over. So let's not ruin it, let's keep going. So the way I use these people models in my business is I try and think about what's this person like. And I use different ones at different times. Oh, he's an expressive, or he's a driver, or she's an E, or she's an I, and so we've got to give her a break in between meetings. I'll do one more, which is my new favorite, and how are we doing on time? This is HBDI. Have y'all seen this one? Most people haven't. I was at FPL in Juno Beach, Florida, and it's 7 o'clock at night. We're sitting around with the client team, and they said, you know, you like all this people model stuff. Have you seen this one? And I guess they had tested everyone there, and so they told me about it, and I said, that's fascinating. So let me tell you about the model, and I'll tell you what happened. So yellow is intuitive, metaphoric, strategic thinking. They can seem a little bit unfocused. Can I tell you that, you know, the mountain bike that I use now is a 26-inch. You can't get parts for it anymore. So this is like a problem, because then I've got blue is logical and analytical. The world consists of an array of boxes. Those boxes are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Everything in life belongs in a box. Only one box. Can't be in two boxes. Can't cross the lines. You can't color across the lines. It's got to go in one box. Every box has a root cause. If you're smart, you understand that root cause, and that's how the world works. They seem rational and thorough. They can seem a little bit limited by the need for proof. If you can't prove it to me, it must not exist. Obviously, they're not galaxies billions of light years away because we can't see them. Green is logical, organized, sequential. What's the bottom line? They can seem very methodical, very reliable, a little bit kind of nitpicky. And red is interpersonal, emotional, empathetic, humanistic, can seem a little bit oversensitive. So anyway, we're sitting there at 7 o'clock at night, and they're telling me about this, and I go, well, you know, what's Susan? Susan is yellow, blue, and a little green. What am I? You're yellow, blue, and a little green. Susan was my pure client, and we would have conversations that no one else understood. You know, she would say, I was thinking about the meeting next week. Do you think we ought to invite? And I'd go, yeah, you know, I thought about that too, but we'd have to ask her first. And she said, I did ask her, so I think we ought to invite him. And I go, okay, I'll do it. And they go, who are you talking about? Marlene was Susan's boss. I asked, what's Marlene? Marlene was green, and I'm yellow. Marlene didn't like me. My stuff did not play well for Marlene, and I was not persuasive with her. So after they told me that she was green, what I would do is I'd do my slide deck, and then I write out my talking points. And so I'd write out my talking points in green. You know, it's like a foreign language. For me, it'd be like Spanish. You know, my Spanish isn't much good anymore. But if I go very slowly, I could write stuff down. And so I'd write it out in green, and then I would explain it to her in green. Step 1, step 2, what's the bottom line? And Marlene started liking my stuff. So My message here is about the platinum rule. So let me back up. If you've heard of the golden rule, raise your hand. What is the golden rule, Jonathan?
I think it's treat others as you want to be treated.
Do unto, exactly. Do unto others as you would like them to do unto you, right? Has anyone heard of the platinum rule? Almost no one has. You have? Go ahead.
Do unto others the way they want to be doing, the way they want to be treated.
Exactly. So that's the message, that all of this stuff, the people models and so on, it's like when you go to a foreign country and you speak their language, even if you're bad at it, it's a way of connecting with them, it's a way of showing respect, and it's a way of influencing them. The platinum rule, whether you use these models or your own set of attributes, what you want to do is figure out what the people you're working with are like, what they need, how they like to be communicated to, and speak their language. If you're like me, you need these frameworks in order to do it, because I'm just not instinctive. If you're a natural, then you can do it without any of this stuff. Whether you use them or not, or different frameworks, doesn't matter. What matters is how you apply this principle. So this means we got 2 more slides and then we got the movie. So as someone reminded me, this is their job, is to help clients think and act differently so they're more successful. And this is my consulting model, which doesn't look like much, but actually really helps me. In order to do that, you got to do 3 things. One thing is you got to figure out what the answer is. So HR is broken in Phoenix. We got to figure out what's broken about it and what needs to be fixed. Second thing you got to do is design the consulting process by which you'll derive the answer. And then the third thing you got to do is lead the client so that when you create the solution square, you've got a guiding coalition of people on it, and you've got solution and people lined up. So just design the solution, design the process to get there, and lead the clients to the answer. Easy peasy, right? Only 3 things. Does anybody see a slight problem with that?
Find out what the problem was.
You have to know what the problem is in order to do these things, so that's right. How do you do these 3 things concurrently? Which one do you think you might do first?
But doesn't it depend on which person you're dealing with?
It does to a degree, and that's the answer, is this is iterative. It's an impossible question. Do you all know what a circular reference is in Excel? This is a circular reference. If I don't know what the solution is, I can't design the process to get there. If I don't know what the solution is, I don't know what the process is, I can't lead the client. If I can't lead the client, I can't get to the solution. So it's like a double circular reference. And you were on the right track. In Excel, when there's a circular reference, like IRR is a function that actually is circular. What you do is successively approximate. It puts in a number and figures out which way it's wrong and then puts in another number. So this is an iterative model. And when stuff is going wrong on projects, the way I use this is I try and think which one of these plates is wobbling the most that's likely to be causing it. And that helps me figure out which thing I need to spin faster. So people models come in. The solution, it's only in the imagined world of academics and consultants that there's a textbook answer. There's never a textbook answer. People are people. People run organizations. They're all different. And the answer has to be adapted to them. Part of the reason I think we're doing this HR assessment is their arch competitor, Willis Towers Watson, went in there and put in a theoretical model that they couldn't implement. We don't know whether, Towers has good models, so we assume the model was good, so we don't know whether they failed to adapt it or failed to do change management, but they ignored the people and left behind something broken. We're doing a strategy project, and our founder, Peter Scott, flew in. The partner was struggling, it wasn't going well. They had this big fancy dinner with the CEO, and the next morning, Peter said to the consultant, he's a deal guy, put M&A in the strategy, and then left. And the guy did, and they're now the 20th largest utility in the United States, and at the time they were teeny tiny and nobody. The theoretical answer is useful as a point of departure, but you got to think about the people. The CEO is the chief strategy officer. Unless the strategy is something that he could embrace, it ain't going to work. Turned out M&A was a good strategy, and it's what he wanted. Obviously, people models are all about client leadership, and we talked about consulting process. When you design your project organization and task assignments, don't just think about logic. Think about what the people are like and set them to doing what they're good at and what they love to do. Find that Venn diagram, and they will pull your boat. So, if you're interested in any of this stuff, here are some links to learn more about it. And again, no magic in these particular frameworks. These are just the ones that over the years have held up for me, and then I just use different ones at different times. And I go, well, Ryan is an HBDI Blue, and so I need to make sure that this is logical and well parsed. Any questions or comments? So now we're going to shift gears and talk about, I think I said cognitive empathy is the single most important thing in consulting. So now we're going to talk about one of the other single most important things in consulting. And in order to do that, we have a guest appearance by a fellow who is apparently now the President of the United States, although when he did this, he was not. So we're going to take about 20 minutes and view the video, and then we'll have a case discussion. No.
It's gonna rock.
Go ahead. So I'm sorry I didn't get the lights turned off, but I really had a good time next door with the Coppola Winery people as a productive field trip. So what do y'all think? Same task the men and the women were given. I guess a couple of disclaimers. One is you might have seen some negotiating tactics by the women that we would not use in consulting. And the other is I can't recommend a leg waxing for anyone. I can't even watch that. So looking at the task, what do y'all think? How would you go at it? The way Sam did he do great, you think, Sam? Not put him in the not so much category, Evan?
Yeah.
So we know we ain't gonna do that. What would we do? Elizabeth?
I think I would have put more onus on the people actually doing the task. So not tell them how to do it, but tell them that they can, and just put confidence in them.
Yeah, Sam's a little bit of a control freak, so maybe delegate some more authority and give them some, help build up their confidence and encouragement. What else might we think about?
A little more discussion before they got started. They had a quick chat. Kwame could have said, look, I know it's up to a spot price. It's not a matter of timing or an hour this way, hour that way, and they could have saved themselves a lot of grief.
So they jumped in and started doing, and had they talked more beforehand, they might have been more effective, sure. What else?
I think a little more due diligence on, like Brian was saying, just kind of taking the time to get everything straight, because like the golf club, like they gave them information on a store that they didn't even carry in a golf club.
So you think that was maybe not good research?
No, it's terrible.
How about their research on the cigars? There's a cigar store owner on the team, and did they think to ask him?
No.
That sometimes it's a good idea to ask people on the team, anybody know anything about this stuff? Because sometimes they do. What else might y'all do different? Christina, sorry.
To add on to what Ryan said, he let one piece of information from one source derail the entire process, and they abandoned the other items to go pursue the beforehand.
Yeah, they're down near a whole bunch of them, and they go to buy the gold bar, which we'll talk a little bit more in a second. Anything else?
For Sam or for everybody on the team?
For the team.
For the team, I think they should at least have some small talk with the owner. Can't just say, hey, you do discount.
Yeah.
Give them something they want. Say, okay, if I buy this golf club, my friends might say, oh, where'd you get it from? I'll get more business for you.
Where the women really negotiated well was the Chanel clip. They go in and the men say, I need a discount. The women did what we just talked about and asked some questions. You know, what makes this so expensive? He said, well, it's like Chanel. So she's smart. What do we think the markup is on Chanel? So what he's told her is there's a lot of markup here. And so maybe he'd settle for cost plus 10%. So what's the assignment? Pay as little as you can. Is that right?
To negotiate the most savings on the products.
To negotiate the most savings on the product. That's close. Let's negotiate a purchase price with the most items purchased at the biggest savings. What does that mean? Do you know what that means?
So you want to purchase all the items. You don't want to walk out without a purchase, which is what the guys did, I think, twice.
You want to purchase the most items, negotiate a purchase price, most items purchased at the biggest savings. So let's say each team buys only one item. I buy the squid for 10 bucks. I save 40%. Tom buys the gold bar for 390 bucks. He saves 10 bucks. Who has the biggest savings? Do we know that?
Percentage, what measure? Is it dollar value or is it percentage wise?
Right.
So we don't know that.
We don't know that. So you're right, I do, because I got 40% off, and so I'm going to claim it. But I'm OCD on outcome-based objectives. I will tell you that you need to spend 10 times as much time as you thinking about the objective. You standing there at the airport and he says crap like, the most items with the biggest savings, and, of course you know what it means. But if you think about it, we don't know what it means. So don't pass go, don't collect $200. When the client tells you what they want, the partner tells you what they want, the project manager tells you what they want, make sure you understand the outcome-based objective and ask yourself, do I really understand it? So I'm going to stipulate that it's dollars, because it could go either way. There's actually a third interpretation. Has anyone had this case, by the way, at UNC? Okay. There's a third interpretation, which one of my classes got after a few years, which is it might be the number of items on which you got savings. I buy 5 and save money, and Tom buys 3, so I win. All 3 of those are legitimate interpretations: percent, item count, and dollars. I'm going to stipulate that if it's less than 5, it's dollars. So that's our key question. What governs whether we save money? If we're trying to save dollars, do we save more money on something that's expensive or something that's cheap? And then, do some things have more savings potential, discount potential than others? So, if we were you start with the outcome-based objective, and then the single most important thing in consulting, one of my list of about 8, is framing the problem. Who was it who said they ought to spend more time talking first? This is what they should talk about. You're exactly right. The first thing is, let's be damn clear what we're trying to solve for, and then let's create a framework or a construct that will let us solve for this. So far, so good? So, what governs savings potential? What would determine whether you could save a lot of money or a little money on something? No, you save more money on margin. That's right. It's high margin like Callaway Golf Clubs. What else?
Competition.
Competition. The Polaroid one-step camera, at the time in the 90s on Fifth Avenue, they had a bunch of electronics and camera stores. Big signs were going bankrupt, dozens of them, big sale today. If you go there today, they're still there. They're still bankrupt. They're still having big sales. What else? Relationship, that's true. If it's a high fixed cost item, if all the costs are fixed, is there more or less savings potential? Actually more. In micro, what they teach you is if costs are fixed, I will cut price until I'm covering my fixed cost if my variable cost is low. So leg waxing, when they show up for work, they've spent all the money. So whether the marginal cost, the variable cost of doing one leg waxing it's like the fuel cost of solar is 0. So it's why the airlines, until they became an oligopoly, would have price wars. If I'm a high fixed cost business with low variable cost, I'll cut until I'm covering my fixed cost even below that. So, let's think about the items. Callaway golf clubs, is that high dollar value or low dollar value relative to the others? High? So, and it's over here somewhere. So savings potential? Gold bar, is that expensive?
Yes.
What's the discount potential on the gold bar? It's nothing. It's a commodity. It's true that the price varies, but the discount off that price isn't going to change no matter what time of day. So who was it who pointed out that it's dumber than dirt that Sam pulled the team to go get the gold bar? So not only was it a bad idea because you concentrated all your forces on one thing when you had to get a bunch of things, but it was the wrong thing. So the gold bar is like here somewhere. What about the squid? Expensive or cheap?
Cheap.
High or low savings potential? Low?
Depends on the day. Depends on the time of day, though.
Okay.
If it's fresh, I mean, your savings is going to be Real low.
So the Fulton Fish Market opens up at 6 a.m. So at 6 a.m., you're exactly right. But they're shopping in the afternoon. What happens to the squid about 5 o'clock?
Try and get rid of it.
So what's the call on discount potential now that it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
It's high.
Yeah, exactly. Well done. Leg wax, high or low? Dollar value? Low. Savings potential? Gave that one away. You know, it's not so much that they would do it just for the pleasurement of watching him. I still can't watch that. The cigars are here. Camera's here. So this is the way it plots. So what you would do if you were organizing this and discussing it, the first thing you do is figure out your outcome-based objective. Spend 10 times as much time as you think you should on that. Make sure that you've got it. The next thing that you would do is develop a framework that lets you solve for that. Often that looks like a tree. What are the things we need? We're then having that discussion, and so what you might think about is where are you going to deploy your troops? So we know we wouldn't do what Sam did. You don't pull them all off of those bunch of things down in the village. This is the 90s, so you don't have the internet. You're calling on the phone, but you get to decide where you, rather than sending people out, you get to decide how many people you put on research and how many people you put on the field. Do you have to put the same number of people on everything? Would you put more people on the gold bar or the golf club? You might put enough people researching the golf club that they found a store where they sell golf clubs. Because a lot of times you can buy them better at those stores than at the ones that don't. So what you might do is after the discussion, you might spend some time on research, getting smart about it before you do anything, right? And you might put more people on this and on this stuff, or on this and on this stuff, than on these things. You might think about where can I buy them, and you might try and think about geography. You know, you're time constrained. So, is there a golf store near one of those camera stores? When you send your people out, do you send your people all to get one thing, or might you double down on some of the higher potential stuff? So the single most important thing that I'm talking about here is framing the problem. When you frame the problem, it lets you allocate your resources. You will be a constrained resource. I've done over 200 projects, and I'm waiting for one where the budget is ample, the scope is manageable, and it's easy to do. There's never enough time. There are never enough resources. You have to, choosing what you do is as important as choosing how you do it. In fact, choosing what you do is more important than choosing how you do it. If you spend time thinking about what are we really solving for, I don't want to sound like Stephen Covey, but start with the end in mind, then you can focus your resources on that thing. If you build a framework and then organize these things according to the framework, then you can concentrate your resources on the hills that are most likely to have gold in them, the hills that are highest potential. That's why framing is so important, because framing is when you decide what you're going to do. If you pick the right thing to do, but do it badly, some guy won the Nobel Prize for this, he did now, but that can work, and the reason is we're learning creatures. We get smarter. So if we're doing the right thing but doing it badly, we just learn how to do it better and better, and in the course of the project we get better. If you pick the wrong thing to do and you do it well, you may get better and better at doing it, but it's the wrong thing and you'll march your client and yourself off a cliff. That's why the outcome-based objective and the frame or the construct are so important to success in consulting. So with that, we're done with too much of me. I want to thank you for your attention. I really want to wish you the best. This has been a wonderful place for me to work. They're great people here. I hope it is as good for you as it is for me. So thank you.